So what I'm doing now is painting a layer of the liquid glass deep pour epoxy all over the wood. Just want to get the wood real good and sealed up. I want to try to avoid leaving pockets that will create unnecessary air bubbles. I'm also painting the resin on there to encapsulate the wood in order to prevent whatever color resin I decide from staining the wood. This is especially important on light colored woods. I want the contrast, not staining. Contrast good, staining bad. Once both boards are painted with clear resin, I'll let that sit and cure for a couple of days. After that, we get to do it all over again, because there's two sides. Now that the boards are all sealed, we can start making the mold. I'm using 3/4 inch melamine for my mold. Mold pieces are all cut and ready to be assembled. Before we can do that though, we need to sand the wood. Not a lot, just enough to scuff it up. Gotta give the epoxy something to bind to, and epoxy doesn't like binding to itself. So just a quick run over with some 220 grit. Once I'm done with the sanding, I'll wipe it all down with some mineral spirits. Clean the dust off real good. Don't want it floating in the resin after all. Well, look at that. First look at how these boards are going to look once they're finished. Pretty. Those silly cracks are kinda a pain in the butt, but I managed to get them good and clean. With that all done and the area wiped down real well, I can assemble the mold. So I screw all the pieces I cut together to make, well, a box. Nothing fancy. Now, let's get to the resin work. I start by spraying the mold down with some silicone mold release spray. And I spread it around with a clean rag. I want to give this tabletop as much chance at popping out of the mold as possible. Finally able to start mixing the epoxy. I'm using liquid glass 2-part deep pour 2-to-1 epoxy. Once the 2 parts are well mixed, I can add the black diamond purple powder pigment. Wow, look at that color pop. Finally, we're ready to pour. I'm going to dump in this first 3 gallons and check for leaks. Leaking equals a bad time. Next, I'm going to set the wood down into the resin, paying extra close attention to the orientation of the wood slabs. It just dawned on me that I don't have anything to hold the wood down, to keep it from floating up. I found some scrap pieces that I can place onto the wood. And, luckily, I have a 25-pound weight to set on the scraps. Okay, first layer of epoxy is all set up. Now I need to sand it back down a little so the next layer has something to adhere to. If I'd gotten to the second layer before the first was completely set, I wouldn't need to sand it. Oh well. I'll give it another good wipe down with mineral spirits to get rid of all the sanding dust. And now, I pour the second layer to top it off. Everything is done the same as the first pour. I'll just give it a little swirl to break up the pattern from the pour. Plus, it's fun to make designs in it. Okay, the pour is done. Now I'll just let this sit for a few days to cure. Then I'll come back and remove it from the mold. I'll get to see if that mold release was worth it or not then.